How you doing, Casual? Thanks for the opportunity to respond to this video. I've watched it through once, and I'd like to say we're both correct. I'll be stopping through this video and addressing the points that you're bringing up. So let's do this.
Hey, what's up everyone? Hope you're all having a great day. Balance is always a popular topic of discussion in many games, where players will constantly talk about how certain things are unbalanced or overpowered, and how certain aspects of the game need to be fixed. In particular, games that are asymmetrical, in which opposing players might have different access to different tools, naturally encourage these kinds of discussions. Balance is one of those problems where it's easy to describe why or that something is the wrong answer, but it's very difficult to come up with the right answer. In a game like Overwatch, players can choose different heroes which are all designed very differently, and inevitably, certain heroes are always going to be seen by the community as being under or overpowered, and therefore in need of being addressed. Blizzard is often criticized for certain design.
I don't know if I went over the perfect balance is obtainable, or what I like to call perfect balance, and you'll see what I mean. Perfect balance is obtainable.
Decisions of which I am one of those critics, and there's no shortage of videos or forum posts talking about how Blizzard sucks at balancing, and how if they just did such and such change, then the game would be better. But today I wanted to introduce a perspective that I don't really hear a lot, which is the idea that the game will never be truly balanced.
It will be truly balanced. As close as it can come. I'll show you the method by the end of this video that describes how you perfectly balance Overwatch.
That perfect hero balancing is probably impossible. Now you might be wondering, is the point of the video just to suggest that certain problems are too difficult and therefore we should give up and just be content with what we have? And of course the answer is no. The reason I want to introduce this idea is that sometimes I think the community can be a bit unrealistic with certain expectations when it comes to balance. That's not to say that I want to defend any particular balance decision from Blizzard or that there aren't reasonable improvements that can be made, but if our goal is to improve the experience of the game, we should at the very least try to understand.
No, here is the fatal flaw that is made by all the balance kids. We're not trying to improve the experience. You've come to your audience and you've said it's time to discuss balance, and just you slip out of it and you start talking about the experience of the play. It doesn't matter if people are having fun or not.
Understand what the limitations actually are, which will then hopefully allow us to discuss the game in a more productive way. To be more specific, I think one of the expectations that part of the community has is that the game should strive to make every hero viable against every other hero on every map, at every skill level, and in every situation.
Okay, this is not true, and you've fallen into the trap. Imagine this scenario. There's 1,000 playable Overwatch heroes, and 900 are trash picks. Would you say this game is balanced? What? Are you complaining about 100 playable heroes? Obviously that all of the heroes being viable does not exclude calling Overwatch balanced. There's many other things that we'll get to, but if a hero has 1 HP and does 1 point of damage every millennium, it doesn't matter. No one's going to pick this hero. Therefore, it basically doesn't exist. So the existence of this hero makes Overwatch unbalanced? No. It's a big mistake a lot of people make.
While yes, this would be the definition of perfection that on paper we might want to move towards, if this is what we're hoping for in reality, I think we're simply setting ourselves up for disappointment. If you believe the average forum post talking about hero balance, you might be led to believe that balance is just so simple, and that changes are really obvious. If Blizzard just changed this and that, the game would be perfect. In reality, balance is a difficult problem, and I think this is true for
it's not difficult.
Reasons. The mathematical complexity of the game.
Nope.
And the diversity of player experience.
No, see, there you go again. Are we talking about the experience, or are we talking about the balance, right? If you take your eyes off balance for 1 iota of a second, you're drawing resources from perfect balance to make up for something else. Let's get the perfect balance in there. The experience doesn't matter. It's bad. Yeah, it's... I know you get deeper into the topic later.
It's no mystery that Overwatch is a complex game. Currently, there are 39 unique heroes in the game, with the most recent one being Mauga. Hero choice is not the only thing that makes a game complex, but it is the primary concern of balance.
No, 1,000 heroes is perfectly balanceable. If now you would have to respond to this, but if there's a trash pick, it doesn't make the game unbalanced.
The word balance in general is used to refer to the relative power.
I mean, yes, it would be nice if all 1,000 heroes were viable picks, but are you complaining about 100 viable heroes? No.
Of heroes. The key phrase relative power is an important one, and how you choose to define it determines how difficult the problem of balance is going to be. Without a lot of thought, we could say that 39 doesn't sound like a very big number. Maybe it's not small, but surely with only 39 heroes, that's only 39 different things you need to do in order to balance the game. A simplistic and naive approach to balancing a hero could be to simply define its power by its win rate. You look at the hero's win rate across the very many games in which they are.
I like this part of it, and although I disagree with it, it comes down to maps. And I haven't thought about the hero-to-hero matchup, but
played, and change the numbers depending on whether it's higher or lower than 50%. If it's lower than 50%, then you buff the hero, and if it's higher, then you...
Right, I'm in this school, but...
If this is how we define balance, then on paper, Overwatch is actually not that bad. If you look at the win rates of all heroes across all ranks, pretty much all of them hover...
Alright, now not all ranks. You only have to look at the top game played in the last 24 hours. Only the top 500 needs to be balanced. There is only one rank... There's only one division in Overwatch, and that is the competitive division. If Brig gets you a free ride to Plat, so be it. There's only one division, and in the only one division, there's only one game, and that's the highest rated game that was played in the last 24 hours. That's all you need to worry about.
Around 45 to 55%. While win rate is a useful statistic, it's commonly said that win rate doesn't tell the entire story.
And this is good. I didn't know it was 45 to 55 win rate across all ranks. That's perfect. That is perfect balance. It's perfect balance. And it would be fine if a lot of those heroes had 30% win rates. It wouldn't preclude it from being perfectly balanced.
Of how a hero feels to play.
No feel. Stop. Are we talking about balance? Because if we're talking about fun, we'll just mail $5 checks for every time someone plays a game, and we'll satisfy your need for a good experience, right?
The overall win rate only paints a picture of the average.
And this goes into something deeper, is that CC, it should be natural. You know, when ball boops you, what does that look like? You know, when soldier shoots a bullet, it goes in a straight line. There's no... You just you can fiddle with the numbers for balance. The, you know, soldier's bullets don't go in curly cues. And likewise, when Doomfist punches you, it should be like a Doomfist punch. You know, there's not... You're not changing... Don't change mechanics to balance when you can do it simply with numbers.
Success of a hero across every situation. But when it comes to averages, the number itself doesn't really tell you anything about how a hero is going to play in any given game.
Right, so this is the thing. You would expect that some heroes perform 100%. This is a good point. Just as an
extreme example, suppose a hero had a 100% win rate in certain situations and a
right,
0% win rate in other ones. Of course, this would be pretty bad, but it could still appear as a 50% win rate. What this means is that true balancing isn't quite as simple as just tuning the numbers until you reach 50%.
Oh, see, you're using a different definition of balance. If I win 10 times easily and I lose 10 times easily, that's perfect balance. What you're saying is correct, but I think it pushes towards the homogenization of the heroes, where they're kind of all the same now, because, you know, they're supposed to shine in certain situations. Now, I don't know if you're talking about maps, because I can talk about that, but if you're talking about hero-to-hero interactions, you know, Reaper versus Widow, there's not... He's supposed to. You know, Sombra versus Widow, Sombra is supposed to defeat Widow 9 out of 10 times. So, that's balanced. If Sombra forces Widow to swap off, that's balanced. There's nothing wrong with that.
In a perfect world, all heroes would have 50% win rates, but being at 50% doesn't necessarily imply that the hero is perfectly balanced. The game, and particularly certain matchups, can feel really unbalanced, even if a certain hero appears to be...
No, it's fine. Like I just proved to you. Sombra defeat... How are you going to avoid a game where Sombra, yeah, Widow shoots Sombra. This, it's tough to argue this point. I don't like it. I don't like it. I'll say that much.
Balanced on average. So balance might be a bit harder than we think, as it's not just 39 heroes we need to balance. As many players correctly point out, the devs can't just chase win rates, they need to more precisely tune heroes with respect to specific matchups. Which sounds relatively simple, but how much harder does the problem really get if we phrase it this way? This question is what you could call a combinatorial problem. Combinatorics is a mathematical field of study dedicated to counting things, and the question we want to ask is how many matchups do we need to balance if we have 39 heroes? Conveniently, there is a formula used to calculate what's called a binomial coefficient.
I don't like this line because my problem was already solved before the complexity issue you're raising up. Like I said, you said in matchups, right? Let me think of a good hard counter. Um, a hard counter makes you swap off the hero, and let's say that it's Sombra versus Widow, and Widow gets the headshot on Sombra before she reaches him 1 out of 4 times, and Sombra kills Widow 3 out of 4 times. Now this would be kind of like a hard counter, right? So what you're advocating for is removing this dynamic of the game in favor of quote unquote balance, right? What you're saying is that Sombra and Widow should be a perfect matchup, but that's not, I hate to say it, that's not what Overwatch is. Yeah, Overwatch is asymmetrical combat. How can you create all these goofy characters with flamethrowers and super jump and super kick or dig in the ground, all these things, and somehow they're supposed to be even when they meet? Then what's the sense in having, what's that's it, it's not. You should just make. I complain about the homogenization. You just make them all soldier at this point. Why would you ever think that a Sombra versus a Widow should be an equal matchup? So now since you've already conceded that, you're going to go into this combinatorial thing, which I agree with, right? If what you say is correct, next step is combinatorial mathematics. But what you said, it was not correct. If Sombra defeats Widow 75% of the time, aka a hard counter, there's nothing wrong with that. And letting that stand in the game does not make it unbalanced. Widow loses to Sombra. It's a team game. Yes, when you take the microscope at the team, obviously what you say is correct, but it's the whole team, right? So we may have someone, watching Widow's back, or yes, of course. The linebacker is stronger than the quarterback. If the linebacker gets to the quarterback, it will be a sack. However, there's other things in play that balances the game. You're saying, well, the linebacker's too much bigger than the quarterback, so it's not balanced. No, that's what it is. I'm not saying your way is wrong, but I wish you were here. Maybe we can talk one day and you teach me a thing or two.
We can use to answer this question. The formula tells us how many unique ways there are to choose a specific number of things out of a fixed set of choices. In our situation, out of a total set of 39 heroes, there happen to be 741 possible non-mirrored matchups. Immediately, we can see that the problem of balancing becomes significantly more difficult.
Only if
ourselves with specific matchups rather than just heroes. But again, the problem of balance.
Only if what you said was true, which it's not.
Balancing doesn't just stop here. Many players point out that we can't just look at specific matchups because Overwatch isn't a 1v1 game.
Oh, there you go, nice.
Sometimes the balance of a hero depends on how it synergizes with other heroes on the same team. And so it's not just specific heroes we need to worry about, we also need to worry about the possible team compositions. So out of 39 heroes, we want to ask, how many team compositions are there?
No, you don't need to. You just look at the win rate. That's it. If they perform... What's wrong? What's wrong with, making them counterpick 10 out of 20 times, and you have to counterpick. The way my balance work, it's rotating, so they'll all be very close in power, but so they're There will be hard swaps, there will be hard counters, but no one's going to pick the ones that are going to be hard countered.
Well, we can again use the same formula that allowed us to calculate.
I may make a whole video explaining exactly how to balance the game, and it has to do with it's always there'll be a nice healthy rotating meta, and the points change, and it'll be pretty cool. Don't don't think is that like I'm going to say do this, 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 and this, and it's perfectly balanced. No, there's an algorithm to funnel the new heroes in and get the powerful ones out.
The number of matchups. Out of 39 heroes, if
It's
we
gonna be a
took
long
5
video.
to put on a team, there would be 575,757
Nah,
possible
nah,
team
nah, nah,
compositions.
nah, nah.
Now, some of you might have already noticed that I might have made a mistake. Surely Overwatch compositions are not that diverse because you can't just pick any 5 heroes to put on a team. Unless, of course, you happen to be playing open queue. If we take role queue into account, there are currently 12 tank heroes, 17 damage heroes, and 10 support heroes, of which we need to choose 1, 2, and 2 respectively. We can simply apply the formula to each role individually and multiply the combinations, yielding 73,440 unique compositions. From this, it might be obvious why the balance team decided to move from open queue to role queue. At the cost of creativity, the game is orders of magnitude easier to balance once you
Not easier to balance.
introduce role locks, because there are significantly less ways that team compositions can be broken. If you're
No. It's easier for them to craft the experience. It's very, very easy to balance.
curious and you're wondering how many compositions there would be if Overwatch was still 6v6 open queue, the number is 3,262,623 possible team compositions. Of course, we again have to consider that Overwatch is not a 5-person co-op game, and we want to know how many non-mirrored 5v5 games are possible. From 73,440 team compositions, there are 2,696,680,080 5v5 matchups. And if we want to get really balanced, we might also want to multiply this number by the number of maps, since maps have a big effect on what type of compositions might be viable.
Absolutely, this is important.
And with 32 maps, there are over 86 billion unique ways the game can be played. And if you really want to get balanced, you have to divide the maps into their various subsections, like the different checkpoints on Escort and Hybrid, and the capture points on Control and Flashpoints. In that case, there are 84 subsections, of which then there are over 226 billion ways the game can be played.
There's a gonna cut you off right there. This is a great point of showing that you must use mathematics. You must use a 50% win rate. Because how would you do it? Let's see what you have to say.
This, we can see why balance is a difficult problem. Of course, it doesn't excuse bad balancing decisions, because even in impossible problems, there can be varying degrees of success. But we can see that even if we had the best game designers who have ever lived, Overwatch is by its nature unlikely to ever be truly balanced, and always
Well, wait. There's some semblance of balance, right? It's not like you pick Reinhardt and everyone else dies. So since there's some semblance of balance, what are they doing? They're not just looking at half of 36 billion or whatever.
going to favor specific heroes in specific situations.
Yeah.
Combine this with the fact that Overwatch is supposed to be an evolving game, trying to constantly keep things new and interesting with consistent additions and changes to the heroes and map pools, the difficulty of the problem is likely to outpace the rate at which you can solve it. Every time you change or add a new hero, it can significantly change the balancing in ways that you might not expect. The power of a particular hero is in many ways relative to the state of the other heroes, and so changes to one can inadvertently result in other heroes becoming weaker at which you can solve it. Every time you change or add a new hero, it can significantly change the balancing in ways that you might not expect. The power of a particular hero is in many ways relative to the state of the other heroes, and so changes to one can inadvertently result in other heroes becoming weaker or stronger. As an example, let's take Ana. If we change Ana's anti-nade, this actually has a very big effect on the balancing of Kiriko, even if nothing about Kiriko changes.
Sure,
When anti-nade is
absolutely.
strong,
Yep.
Kiriko's Suzu naturally gets more value, and therefore is also strong. What
Absolutely.
this means is that nerfing or buffing one thing will immediately change the balancing of other things that it's related to. The
Yeah.
relationship between heroes and team compositions is a complex network. Every
It doesn't matter if it's a complex network. We're looking at 50% win rate.
time you try to correct the balance of one hero, you will probably end up breaking the balance of another.
Sure.
Now, of course,
sure.
enumerating every single team composition across every possible subsection of every map in order to suggest that balance can't be perfect is probably a bit unnecessarily dramatic and overly pessimistic. My
Okay.
intention is only to actually describe the problem so that we can temper our expectations, but surely no player
There's no perfect balance is achievable.
actually expects the developer to achieve perfection.
No, I do. It's easy. It's really easy to balance. I'll show you how.
We just want the game to be at a level where heroes are at the very least minimally viable in as many situations as possible. Naturally, if we can't reach perfection, we can at least hope for an approximation, but unfortunately, this comes into the second problem, which is the diversity of player experience. Sometimes there are multiple different answers to the same problem that depend.
See, there you go again. Experience. Are we talking about balance or are we talking about experience? If we're talking about balance, I'll show you how to do it. If you want to talk about experience, I would suggest that every time someone plays a game of Overwatch, Blizzard mails them a check for $10,000. Don't you think they would be happy with that experience? Don't you see how that's a bad argument?
On what your variables are.
And it goes back again. Can we change the experience by making soldiers' bullets go in curly cues? It's out of the question. Soldiers' bullets goes in straight lines. Experience. Are we talking about balance? Sorry to be so stern, but this is where the balance discussion always goes to. It's the I say it till I'm blue in the face.
are. Perhaps the most important variable related to player experience is skill level, and undoubtedly, skill level very significantly affects your perspective on balance. And so, even if we can come up with good approximations for balancing the game, we have to answer the question of who the approximation is going to be based on. This is the age-old question of should the game be balanced for the best players, the worst players, or the average players.
It's not. This question was answered before it was asked. It's for the best players. If you want to make a peewee league, such as flag football, or, we'll go with football, right? There's different rules in professional football and college football and high school football, but notice that they never play each other. So it is contained within itself. I can go try out for a professional football team. I will not make it. They are not to change the rules and have a different league. There's only one division in Overwatch, and that is the competitive division. We'll go into something different. If you want to make peewee leagues in Overwatch, you can't. Because it's impossible to police. It's impossible to keep OWL players outside of the peewee leagues. So they're all for naught. So, see, a lot of these two things so far, you've presented a problem that wasn't correct. And then you go with the solution. No.
A pragmatic and important question, especially if you're Blizzard and one of your primary goals is to ensure that the game is popular and profitable.
I picked a software engineering program because they pay very well. It's a fast-paced industry. It was 10 months.
Okay, this one I can't argue with. If you are balancing for maximum revenue generation, and therefore experience maybe, then I'm not arguing with you. You can do anything you want. My problem comes from an unlimited budget. I have 300 engineers, I'm going to make Overwatch, and we're going to make it perfectly balanced. You're saying that people won't buy the skins if we do it my way, which is fine. I can't argue that. But perfect balance is achievable. So long as you have $10 billion in the bank to fund an unprofitable game, and nothing more.
In the online community, you'll find supporters of all three perspectives, each making their arguments about why their perspective is the right one. A less popular opinion is that the game should be balanced bottom up. Around lower elo, you'll find supporters of all three perspectives, each making their arguments about why...
The answer to that is it has to be... I've already answered this. It has to be balanced from the top down.
Why the perspective is the right one. A less popular opinion is that the game should be balanced bottom up, around lower elos or around newer players. If you want to attract newer players, maybe this is the best way to do it.
Really quick, if you balance from the bottom up, there will be 5 must picks. It will be goats all over again at the top levels. If you say you balance like around platinum and diamond and low master, or I don't know, diamond and master, whatever. In top 500, it's going to be goats again, where it's a perfectly mirrored match every single time, because it can't do the other thing, right? It can only get worse. Yeah, if you're a diamond player, game will be beautiful because anyone can really balance it, pretty decently. Like this, Overwatch balance is okay. But if you balance at diamond, if you balance at masters, top 500 will be 5 must picks, mirror match, every time.
Since if you make the game as approachable as possible, you might have a chance of generating a larger player base. This philosophy is probably a better fit for a mobile game and is probably not a good approach for Overwatch. Since player retention is also important, and you don't want the experience of newer players to get worse as they
Why MOBA? I don't play MOBA games, but anyway.
Improve at the game. If you listen to content creators and streamers who in general are going to be on the upper end of the skill spectrum, you'll almost certainly get opinions that are biased towards balancing the game around average to higher elos.
And the top people get to call the game. You're right. The low elo says we want you to balance for us, and the top elo says, no, we want you to balance for us, and neither one is wrong. However, the bottom people can get better and join the discussion at the top. Are you suggesting that the top 500 throw to get a good balanced game? What is that? It's like people don't understand what sports is. I don't know how else to say it.
If you read forum posts and YouTube comments, you'll also get low to average elo opinions of the game, since that's going to be most of the player population. The argument in support of balancing strictly around high levels is that Overwatch is a competitive game at its core, and so it just makes sense to balance the game around players who are actually utilizing their heroes to the full extent, within the bounds of human limitations, since that is the most accurate image of a hero's actual power level. If you look to lower skill levels to make balance changes, it disrupts the balance at the upper end of the spectrum, potentially ruining the competitive integrity of the game. Maybe it's the case that Blizzard should aim to respect the players who promote their game and who are the most dedicated to mastering it.
No, just balance from the top down. That's it.
That's surely not an unreasonable perspective, but the most obvious counterargument is not one of functionality, but one of practicality. The population of players who are capable of fully utilizing the power of various heroes is a rather small one, and is at a skill level that most players will never even reach. At the end of the day, the game needs to attract an audience because it needs to be profitable.
See, there you go. We have to operate with an unlimited budget to discuss balance in earnest. We can pretend that Overwatch doesn't need to make money, and then we can try to balance it. Because you're saying, if we don't do this, then we won't get the money. That's not true. We could have a 10-year operating budget for Overwatch free of charge. Warren Buffett gave it to us. So this is another, it's a misstep. I don't think you're malicious, but it's not... To say it can't be unbalanced because it won't exist anymore is not true.
And therefore it needs to be fun for most people. As such, maybe we shouldn't balance the game around high elo, since relatively speaking, quote-unquote, nobody plays at that level anyway.
And there's another thing. If we balance around high elo, the bronze kids would have a blast. I'm telling you, they would.
High elo games aren't representative of the experience of most players, and therefore shouldn't be the primary motivation for balance, since if the game isn't enjoyable for the majority, there wouldn't be a game to be good at anyway.
Wait, see how you automatically have won the argument you've presented? If we bounce from the top down, the bronze kids would have a horrible time. That's not true. That's not necessarily... What do you think? Where did you... What? What?
Instead, one might say that the game should be balanced around average skill levels like gold in order to appeal to as many players as possible. This is a rather utilitarian approach where...
You could say they have a better time, but I highly doubt it.
The decisions are made to benefit the greatest number of people, and as a now free-to-play game, the perspective certainly holds more weight for Blizzard. While in an ideal world, we would want everyone to have an optimal experience, unfortunately, these perspectives are difficult and perhaps impossible to make entirely compatible. Changes that create better balance on one side of the spectrum often cause unbalance on the other side, and we can see that the balance team have in some ways submitted themselves to this fact. Reinhardt is notorious for underperforming at higher levels of play, but has been left alone for the longest time.
There you go. You can't do that. You can't bring throw picks into the discussion to further your cause for an unbalanced game. Because if there's a hero with 1 hit point and does 1 damage per second, that does not make for an unbalanced game, because he might as well just not exist. So the existence of a throw pick does not make the game unbalanced. Yeah, yes, it makes the game unbalanced. In my way, they'll all be pretty much viable. But I've shown you from the example 2 different ways. 1,000 different heroes, 900 are throw picks. Are you complaining about 100 viable heroes? It's a misstep.
Precisely because he overperforms at lower levels. Soujourn is notorious for being one of the best DPSs in the game, and yet receives buffs because she underperforms even in Grandmaster. They're just...
No. I think that when heroes are overtuned in top 500 is because they want her to be seen. They want certain heroes to shine in, or maybe she really underperformed 9 months ago, and they're trying to even the balance out over a year period just to kind of get their footing. The reason Sojourn was overpowered and then received buffs for not the reason you stated. I don't know why they exactly do it, but...
Isn't really an easy answer to this problem. It's almost inevitable
so let's see what
that
you said.
Performs at lower levels. Sojourn is notorious for being one of the best DPSs in the game, and yet receives buffs because she underperforms even in Grandmaster.
Because she underperforms in Grandmaster. And there you go. There's a solution to your own problem. Don't balance... Wait, what'd you say? Yeah, sorry.
At higher levels of play, but has been left alone for the longest time, precisely because he overperforms at lower levels. Sojourn is notorious for being one of the best DPSs in the game, and yet receives buffs because she underperforms even in Grandmaster.
Even in Grandmaster, what are you saying here? That she's perfectly fine in top 500, but at the low end of Grandmaster, she underperforms? I'm gonna have to pause this. So Sojourn is the best. I need a follow-up question on this. Sojourn is the best and still receives buffs even though she underperforms in Grandmaster. If she's the best and underperforms in Grandmaster, that's oxymoron. I don't understand how you're saying she's the best but underperforming in Grandmaster. That maybe I'm missing something, but
it's almost inevitable that regardless of how many buffs or nerfs you do, some handful of heroes will always rise above the rest and differ across the spectrum of skill, making the
they'll never rise above the rest. If a hero rises above the rest, all you do is nerf it, right? You went over this previously, but and see, you're still stuck on the silver, gold, platinum balance, right? No.
The game impossible to balance for everyone.
Everyone? No, not for everyone. What do you go balance it unless a baby can play? Are you balancing it for 5-year-olds? What do you mean? Everyone who enters? I don't get this. It is balanced. If it's balanced from the top down, it's balanced for everyone because they can get better. I need the discourse, right?
One way to make this problem a bit easier to solve would be to more closely match the skill curves of every hero, such that given a certain amount of skill, every hero should get a similar amount of value.
Yeah.
If you've experienced climbing up the skill ladder, you've probably realized that certain heroes just simply start to fall off the higher you go, and previously ineffective heroes can start to become more practical as well. The primary limiting factor for a hero's effectiveness at lower skill levels is often difficulty, and in contrast at higher skill levels is potential ability, which is a combination of the natural limitations of a hero's kit and their stats. Naturally, this is why players of different skill levels tend to gravitate towards different heroes. If balance is the only goal, heroes that are strong at lower skill levels and weak at higher levels could be better balanced by increasing their stats while simultaneously increasing their difficulty. In the opposite case, where heroes are weak at lower skill levels while strong at higher levels, it could be better balanced by decreasing stats while also decreasing their difficulty.
You can only balance through numbers, and we're only balancing from the top down.
Fortunately, when it comes to optimizing player experience, there is yet another dimension of game design that we have to consider, which again ultimately makes the game very difficult to balance. It's the human elements of game design, which is that the game needs to be fun. Different players.
There you go. Every time you play a game of Overwatch, you get a check for $10,000 in the mail. Would you not describe that as fun? It's I'll take a moment here. I've discussed balance with maybe 5 other people, and they always talk about fun, and that's not what we're talking about. Balance means that you have a large amount of heroes in the top 500 matches. You have a large amount of heroes you can pick from. Let's say, I don't know, what's a fun amount of heroes to pick from? 10, 20, 30, 90. Let's say we had 100 heroes that you could pick from. This would be fun. This is, we started talking about balance, and now you're talking about fun. It's not the same thing. Is a balance game fun? Yeah, it is.
Players define fun differently, and even if it were the case that we could match the skill curves of every hero, it wouldn't necessarily be the case that everyone would immediately find the game to be in its most enjoyable state. Some high-elo player would probably think that the skill curve is too flat, and some low-elo player would probably have the opposite opinion. And
don't look at low-elo players. They can always get better. It's their fault that the game's unbalanced, not the game's fault.
Believe that the skill curve is too steep. Everyone says that they would like the game to be perfectly balanced, but does a perfectly balanced game actually lead to something that is perceived as being more fun? Many of
Hey, stop it.
the elements that make the game more fun aren't always things that will necessarily make the game more balanced, and in fact, oftentimes, lead to the opposite. Going back to the issue of skill levels, players generally want their hero to feel effective in their own hands.
It doesn't affect it.
But this means different things to different players. If it were up to the more hardcore players, maybe every hero should be as difficult as Tracer. If it were up to more casual players, maybe
I have a good example about this, is let's suppose there's a hero that exists, that if it stays in spawn, it gives 100 extra HP to the other 4 people. We can balance this perfectly by increasing or decreasing the amount of HP given to your other 4 allies. So, this is a brain dead hero. It requires no skill, and yet it's perfectly balanceable. See what I'm saying? Do you understand the definition of balance? A hero that stays in spawn gives 100 extra HP to all 4 of its allies so long as it stays in spawn is a perfectly balanceable hero, because if the hero is losing too much, we just increase the amount of HP given, and if it's winning too much, we just decrease the amount of HP given. And this hero will win 50% of the time, therefore it is perfectly balanced. It doesn't matter how difficult it is to acquire the power that is bestowed on that hero. That has nothing to do with balance. And it doesn't matter how fun it is to stay in spawn. We can mail him a check for $10,000. Kinda, right? It has nothing to do with balance. So, to obtain the power bestowed upon the hero, or to dish out fun, is not in the realm of the balance discussion.
Every hero should be as easy as Moira.
Too many meetings.
My definition
missing
of balance.
The key action items.
The
It's
real
time to
definition of
put your
balance.
According to-
The only leeway I'll give you on the definition of balance is, yes, you would want all 1,000 heroes to be viable, but it's not necessary.
For some, Moira needs more skill expression in order to be worth playing, and according to others, Tracer needs less. Players might say that they want the game to be balanced, but in reality, the changes that might actually accomplish this most likely wouldn't be received very well either. And so
Oh yeah, you're talking about the balance between the skill disparity. Well, that's not balance. That's not, when you say balance, you're talking about the power of the hero. It doesn't matter who and what can obtain it. Are you saying that? And if a hero needs so much skill expression that no one can obtain it, then we're only looking at the top 500 matches. We're only looking at obtainable power. So if the power exists and it's obtainable, it doesn't exist in the first place. We'll find out at the top when the top player plays. We'll see.
This compromise, the solution that most games implement, is simply allowing both kinds of heroes to exist, so that both sides have things that are considered fun. This necessarily implies that something has to be unbalanced for everyone. It's fairly obvious that by design, certain heroes are just meant for certain skill levels, which unfortunately means that sometimes there are just certain heroes that you aren't.
Never ever talk about skill level. There's one division in Overwatch, and that's the competitive division. If you try to create a peewee league, you'll never be able to keep the OWL players out of it.
Quote unquote, supposed to play. In addition, there's also the mentality that the game needs to change every so often in order to keep things interesting. New maps, new modes, new heroes, new reworks, and new game mechanics. While content is nice,
Interesting? Are we trying to make an interesting game or a balanced game? I think a balanced game would be interesting.
And changes, once again, make it very difficult to keep the game in a state of balance if one exists. For many players,
State of balance, you can roll a bunch of dice and balance the game that way, and it might work. And also there are many states of Overwatch balance. Many different ways that fit my definition of balance.
There's content is what keeps them coming back, and many players are able to overlook balance issues in favor of having something new and fun. Not only that, but different players naturally favor different kinds of metas, which means that the game is usually the most fun for a subset of people, precisely
Stop talking about fun.
when the game is unbalanced, favoring their playstyle for their favorite hero. Inevitably, people are biased, and so even if the game could be in a hypothetical state of perfect balance, everyone would simply think that the game isn't fun because their favorite hero isn't particular.
Oh, this is important, and it's something they vowed not to do, and I guess League of Legends does, is you have to show the hero picks at the top 500, and even throughout the whole ladder, so that people know not to pick Reinhardt in higher elos, even though they're well aware. You know, it all needs to be made public, right?
Really strong, or because their most hated hero isn't weak enough. Not to mention that a game that's balanced is a game without a meta, and therefore would eventually be perceived as a game that's apparently...
Yeah, so you're talking about the perception, and you're correct about this. However, we're going to release the numbers, so that if you perceive it to be wrong, we can say, look, in the top 500, here's the 30 top heroes. You got 30 heroes to pick from, and each role, right? I want no limits, but get into that later. So that you're saying they won't perceive it as balanced. Well, we're going to give out the numbers, and then there will be no doubt. It's not up for debate what balance is and what it isn't, if you forego the discussion about fun and revenue generation.
Boring and stale. Someone somewhere is always going to be unhappy with the state of the game, and so naturally there's not a lot of motivation to spend.
Yeah. If your hero's in the dumpster, it's a bad thing. Doesn't mean it's a unbalanced game.
Too much effort balancing a game, because in some ways it's not even the primary element of the game that keeps it interesting for most people. And so the pragmatic solution is just to leave the game unbalanced, but allow different heroes and playstyles to cycle in and out of the meta.
Right.
In theory, giving every player their time in the spotlights.
Sure.
So in conclusion, balance is probably impossible because it's fundamentally a difficult problem due to the complexity of the game.
You have a bad definition of balance. I think I disproved it with the 1,000 hero thing and the fun and the revenue.
Players experience balance in different ways, and there's an inherent motivation to prioritize other conflicting goals. That's all I have to say for now. Feel free to let me know your thoughts about the idea of balance. If you made it this far, I want to thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing and leaving a like and comment to support the channel. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful day.
Oh, I thumbs down your video, sorry. I'm leaving that thumbs down there. But let me end with a definition of balance.
Here's one thing.
A definition of balance is a nice healthy meta at the top 500. Like, in general, that's what we want. We want a wide variety of characters in the top 500, and this is balanced. We can talk about maps and hard swaps later. We would have to do some things to make sure, and I may have to play around with it. Maybe I don't have all the answers, but a lot of the topics you brought up really didn't have anything to do with balance in my eyes. But I'll probably make a video describing the algorithm to show you how to make a perfectly balanced game like Overwatch, like League of Legends, asymmetrical heroes, and everyone's, viable, But yeah, I think I'll end it there. Sorry if I came across a little rude or something, but hopefully I have the fortitude to make this video right now. Thanks for the opportunity, and keep putting up the content. It's really good. I do like your channel more than most, except CarQ. You're not, but all right. Thanks, man. See ya.